Welcome to your weekly UAS news update. This is the week of March 22nd, 2021. This week I got 4 topics, actually 5 topics. This is a very busy week, lots of news. And the first thing is something that people have been waiting for a long time, which is the Mavic 3 rumors. Now, we don't have a release date just yet, but we're going to be talking to Haye in just a minute from DroneXL, and we'll go over everything that he found out. And, well, you'll see. Interesting. The next thing is I want to talk about a troubling court ruling that goes against some pilot drone activity that happened, and I want to cover this. This is something that we need to keep an eye on because this could be trouble down the line. I want to talk about the FAA Symposium that is back. There's going to be 2 episodes. It's online again like it was last year, but it actually may not be a bad thing. And then the last thing is I want to talk about a drone pilot that is going after a surveyor board in North Carolina. And this is also a very interesting topic. And then lastly, we'll talk about our drone podcast that we just released on Tuesday. We get a new episode coming up this Tuesday. So stay posted. Let's get started. Our first story this week is the Mavic 3. Finally, you guys have been waiting for this. I know I've seen a lot of rumors going on for a long time about this Mavic 3 finally coming out. So we have Haye with us, and Haye from DroneXL, you know him by now. And he's got some information about some rumors that came out this week. Actually, that came out on Friday when we posted the last news update. I was like, damn it, we just missed it by one day. But Haye, welcome on the show again. Tell us, what did you find this week?
Yeah, thank you, Greg. Yeah, we can't always exactly time when we receive these little bits of information, of course. I mean, this one came through a Chinese social media network through one of the people that we know in China, and Jasper, my fellow Dutchman who recently joined DroneXL, he was actually able to find this. And the sketch that we're showing on our website is basically an interpretation of a photo that we've seen. We can't show the photo to anybody, unfortunately, but we were able to get this sketch that basically gives us an idea of what the design of the new Mavic 3 is going to be. Now, keep in mind that this is a prototype or even an early production model, so things are still likely to change. But if you look a little bit closer at this image, you can see that they did make some changes. I mean, just like with the DJI Mavic Air 2, the design is more aerodynamic. They optimize the design as well. I think one of the important features now is that the battery slides in from the back, but DJI even eliminated the back flap that would otherwise secure the battery, basically in the same way we've seen with the DJI Mavic Mini and the Mini 2. This design is slightly different. I think it's going to be more resemblant of the DJI, FPV drone, where the battery just slides in from behind and just kind of clicks into place. That way you save the additional weight of a battery door, and also it makes the design just that much more simple. Another important thing to point out here is that the obstacle avoidance sensors, you might see those in the drawing as well, have been moved to the front of the drone. So it seems that whole section that's right over the gimbal and the camera is now the forward-facing obstacle avoidance sensors as well as the upward-facing ones. We think that the ones that protect the drone from the sides are going to be located behind the rear arms. We're not entirely sure on that, but that's based on this sketch. Seems to be the most logical place. You can see again the entire design is more aerodynamic. There are air scoops for heat dissipation, and it seems to be even more compact than what we're already used to. The camera that's shown here is not the camera that the drone will eventually have. So don't draw too much from that part of the sketch. It's mostly the body that we have most of the information from.
Now, I've been hearing people say, and as always, there is a lot of stuff going on, but people saying a micro four third camera, or, what are your thoughts on that? Because I really don't think they're at that level yet. That's the Inspire level kind of camera. What do you think what's the next step? I mean, we have 1-inch sensors on the Mavic 2 right now. What would be the next logical move for DJI?
It's gonna be a slightly bigger sensor than what we've seen in the Mavic Air 2, but it's not gonna be a 1-inch sensor. What we've heard, it would be 1/1.7 inch. Expect the same trick that we've seen with the DJI Mavic Air 2, where basically you take multiple photos to get like a high resolution image. So that might be as high as 64 megapixels. We also suspect that you're going to get, of course, better low light sensitivity with a larger sensor. So this drone should be considerably better than what we've seen from any other DJI drone. I think it will be better even than what we've seen from the DJI Phantom 4 Pro version 2, even though that has still a larger sensor, of course. But I think DJI is going to step it up quite a bit. 4K video, 60 frames per second for sure. We're not sure on the megabits per second, but I would imagine that rate is going to be sufficiently high to get a real high quality level of video.
Something that people have been asking, and I don't have the answer to that, the O3, the OcuSync 3.0, the compatibility of that with the smart controller. Do you have any idea? Because, I think about the technology in itself, and DJI went into the OcuSync design because it can be changed with software pretty easily. That's the reason they went away from what we have in the Inspire 2, for example. So I wonder, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, what I've heard about the smart controllers, that the hardware inside is actually quite old. So I'm not sure if it's going to be that much further forward compatible with newer drones coming out. I mean, I hope so. I'm not quite sure. We haven't heard anything of confirmative on that. I wouldn't be surprised if that lifespan is actually quite limited on the smart controller. They sold it as the one controller that you can use to manage an entire fleet of drones, and I think that's true, and that's the ultimate goal of that device. I'm not sure if the current one is going to be able to be forward compatible to the newer drones, let's say, as a DJI Mavic 3. I think there might be a good chance that they come out with a version 2 of that smart controller that's going to be way more up to date, way faster. They get rid of all the bugs that we had in there and come up with something more decent. So I'm not quite sure. I mean, I'll ask around to see what we can find out, to see if we can get something more specific on this, but I'm not sure. I'm a little hesitant with the smart controller, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a good device. I have one. I love it because I can control, like you said, several drones with it. If we have the ability to see this and become compatible with future drones and older drones, then that would make sense. It is buggy. There are some things in there that I don't like, but overall, I think it's a great idea. The concept is a great concept. The $1 million question, obviously, on everybody's mind is when for this drone, and I don't think there is any data on that yet, right?
Not much. I mean, of course, the FPV drone just came out. Now we have news that there's going to be a DJI Air 2S drone coming out, so the successor of the DJI Mavic Air 2, which only came out about a year ago. It would be amazing if we get to see a DJI Mavic 3 in September. However, rumors have indicated that we might not see that drone entirely this year, but we might have to wait until 2022. In my mind, that seems a bit far away, considering how old the Phantom 4 Pro version 2 is by now, and as well as the DJI Mavic 2 Pro and Zoom. So I'm not quite sure. I think September might make a lot of sense for DJI to launch a new drone right before the Q4 shopping season. However, we'll have to wait and see. One thing I've learned with a lot of the DJI product launches is that things tend to change even at the last moment, because the FPV drone was supposed to be launched earlier. We've seen it with the DJI Mavic 2 Pro and Zoom. They were supposed to come out in the summer of 2018. They were pushed back towards the end of the summer. So it always seems a little, I wouldn't want to say messy, but it seems that at the last moment, things might still change with DJI. So we've been told that it's going to be likely be 2022. I'm hoping for sooner. I think we're overdue at this point. I would be very happy to see a Mavic 3 arrive to the market in September, October.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, the Mavic 2 Pro is really starting to show its age in comparison to the rest of the technology out there. Any idea, we know DJI has great drones with great sensors. The obstacle avoidance has always been a little bit behind compared to the other manufacturers out there, especially the Skydio and all that. Was there any hints as to the added capabilities with this new drone?
We haven't really spoken about that, but I mean, if you look at the DJI Mavic Air 2 Pro, that has 360-degree obstacle avoidance. So I don't think for a Mavic 3, DJI would do anything less but 360 degrees, also upwards and downwards, of course. So I would imagine that it's going to be all-around obstacle avoidance. The best comparison might well be the DJI Mavic Air 2, which actually is quite capable in terms of following you and avoiding trees and bushes and the like. So I would imagine that the Mavic 3 would be at least the same capacity or the same level, but then with all-around obstacle avoidance, and hopefully maybe even better. I don't think it's going to be at Skydio's level, because Skydio has an entirely different approach with their AI software and also their predictive software. They have an entire set of 4K video cameras basically recording and mapping out the entire environment. I haven't seen anything from DJI that really competes at that level. However, I was quite impressed with the DJI Mavic Air 2, and I think the Mavic 3 should be at least as capable, but then with the addition of 360 degrees and up and downward obstacle avoidance. So I think that would be pretty decent for sure.
That makes sense. Anything else we've missed?
Not really. I mean, we're trying to pin down when the DJI Air2S. That name keeps tripping me up. We're wondering when that drone is gonna surface. I mean, we've seen the FCC filings. Typically, FCC filings come up weeks before a drone is introduced. It wouldn't surprise me if we see that within the next 3 to 4 weeks from now, but we haven't been able to pinpoint down an exact launch date. That's what we're working on right now, and as soon as we have information on that, we'll be sharing that with you guys, of course, as well.
Yep, and you guys know where to go. DroneXL.co is where you get all your information, and you'll be hearing more of Haye with our new podcast that we're doing together on Tuesday morning. So I'm going to talk about this at the end of this episode with more information. Well, Haye, thanks for your time. We'll be keeping an eye on all this, and then hopefully have you next week again talking about what else came out. Another third drone or fourth drone from DJI.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure as always, and I'm looking forward to the second episode of Pixel. That's going to be an exciting drone show, so looking forward to that one as well.
Got it. All right, thanks, Haye.
Thank you.
And the second topic this week is coming from Michigan, and this is something that's a little bit troubling, and this is something that we need to keep an eye on. I don't think it's over just yet, but a court of appeal in Michigan decided that it ruled 2-1 that a township could not use drone photos that were captured without a warrant, and they were captured with a drone. So here's the backstory. This is in Long Lake Township. This is in Michigan. They hire a drone photographer to capture photos of somebody's backyard because there was a lot of junk, supposedly, that was reported. They bring this to court, they go after the couple, and the couple basically comes back and says these pictures cannot be admitted because they go against our Fourth Amendment right, which is basically protects people from unreasonable search and seizures. So they actually lose. They lose in the trial court. The trial court says basically these pictures can actually be used. So they go in front of an appeal court, and the appeal court, two of the judges, I guess, I'm not sure who actually makes the ruling. I'm not all that familiar with this, but basically they vote 2-1, and they basically said that these photos go against Fourth Amendment and that they actually should have had a warrant in order to get these pictures. Now, what's really troubling here is the Supreme Court had ruled a long time ago that anything that is visible from public navigable airways is basically not protected under the Fourth Amendment. There is no expectation of privacy. So if somebody gets you from flying from an airplane and gets pictures of you in your backyard, there's really no expectation of privacy there. And so this court is saying the opposite. They're basically going against what the Supreme Court is saying. And one of the person that voted in this, I guess, again, like a judge, basically said that they weren't so sure that this was actually applicable. So they didn't want a rule against the township. But the other two basically said it's okay. So this is troubling for a lot of reasons, because they also said that if it was done with an airplane, it would have been okay, but not with a drone. So where do you cut the line here? The judge basically said that they're worried about the intrusive nature of drones. That was a quote from one of the judges that voted 2-1. So we're going to keep an eye on this. I'm torn in a way, because obviously privacy is a big thing. My own privacy, because I, don't want somebody using drones to be spying on me or my family, obviously. But on the same side, the fact that everything in the open is not protected is something that the Supreme Court has mentioned. So again, we'll see what comes out of this. We'll keep you posted when more information comes out, but that's where we are at the moment. Okay, next thing, the FAA Symposium. The FAA Symposium is back. Last year, there were 2 episodes, and I kind of made fun of this last year. We attended, made fun of it because they made it sound like it was a Star Wars episode. And they came back this year, and guess what? They actually called the new episode 3 and then episode 4. So instead of calling it episode 1 and 2 of this year. Anyway, an episode is several days. It's going to be a 2-day event. The first one is going to be in June 9 to June 10. So that's technically episode 3. And then the second one is going to be from September 14 to September 15. That's technically episode 4. They're going to be virtual. Last year was actually a positive surprise to see how this developed. It was actually a fairly, how can I say this? intuitive to get on and actually talk to people. There were some glitches for some people, but overall, I think it was a good experience for a first. So hopefully they learned from the feedback they got last year. Now I'm going to be a little critical. They didn't learn from one of the feedback that we provided, which was this is expensive. This is expensive. The 2 episodes together is $375, which I think it's not just the FAA and AUVSI are putting this together. And I think they're just ruling a lot of people out. A lot of people that are starting in this industry and want to be at this level just don't have $375 to spend. And if you want to do just one day, it's $150. Just one episode is $249. So we'll be there. We'll be providing you information about what we find out. I just wish that the price was a bit more affordable especially for those businesses that are starting, that need to hear all the information that goes on into these symposiums. So that's my gripe. I'm going to stick with it. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is something really interesting, because this is something we mention in the course to students when we talk about doing mapping. And doing mapping is not doing surveying, and nowhere on your website should it say that you're doing surveying, because, well, the Board of Surveyors in your state can come after you and say, hey, you're providing surveying services and you don't have a license, and they can actually fine you. This is going on in North Carolina. The board in North Carolina, and their name is the Board of Examiners for Engineers and Surveyors. I'm just going to call them the board. The board has been making a lot of threatening letters to drone pilots, telling them that they can't be sharing pictures with metadata that includes GPS information, which, as you know, is pretty much every photos taken by a drone these days. And they're saying that this equates. So if you're capturing data and sharing that data with your customers, and you're stitching images together to make orthomosaic maps, that's considered surveying. And this person, Michael Jones, he get the letter, he stopped doing operation, and then he thought about it and he said, this is a little bit of bullying on the part of the board, and it seems like it's working. They're sending a lot of these letters apparently to people, and not just this board, boards across the country, and he decided that that wasn't really fair. So he's going after them, he's suing the board, and he's basically saying that them preventing him from taking these images goes against his First Amendment. And he's working with the Institute of Justice, and they're helping him put this suit together and going after the board. He's basically saying, hey, I'm capturing these images. They're not being used to set any kind of legal boundaries. They're just being used for information. So I should be allowed to do this kind of information. And I have to agree with this. There's got to be a line, obviously, when somebody is providing survey grade data. They have to be a surveyor. I understand all that. But providing just information for customers that don't need that survey grade, that don't need to spend that amount of money to get the information, that should be allowed. So that's just my personal opinion. Try not to give you too much of my personal opinion, but I think in a lot of cases, these boards are overreaching, and it's working because they're threatening enough that they can get away with it. So I don't care for bullying, and to me, this is a sort of bullying. So there is a lot at stake actually here. There's a lot at stake because if the board actually wins, what can happen is that you have public safety that could be using a drone to capture 2D images or 3D images of a crash site for reconstruction. The board could go after them and basically say, hey, you need a surveyor license in order to do this. So that opens up a lot of doors if the board actually wins this. And this is not something that we want to see, I think, in this industry. This would actually slow down the industry quite a bit. So with that being said, surveyors may disagree with me on this one, but it is what it is. The last piece this week is we have a new podcast. You may have seen it. We did the first episode, posted it on Tuesday. The channel is called Pixel Drone Show, Pixl. And we're going with Haye Kesterloo from Drone Excel and Kara Murphy. We are providing you with more in-depth drone news than this episode. This episode, typically, I cover several topics and I go pretty quickly. This is going to be much more in-depth, and you'll get to know and get a bit more information about all of us, and a bit more personal information. This week on Tuesday, we're talking to John McBride, and John has been in the industry forever, and even before the industry was the industry. And we're talking to John because he's a DJI retailer, or reseller, I should say. And recently, DJI announced that they're going to start selling enterprise drones directly to the customer. And we wanted to get his point of view. I've seen a lot of what he said on several forums, and we wanted to bring him on board to basically talk about this and what effect this is going to have. And I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation. So hopefully we can even dive into other topics with John. Like I said, extremely experienced in the industry, and I'm sure you've seen him. He's very recognizable. So make sure you catch on. Make sure you go to the channel. This is on a separate channel. We have a separate YouTube channel. This is also posted as a podcast. So if you're driving and you want to listen to just this and not see our faces, which is really not all that exciting, quite frankly, then you can also catch that on any of your podcast channels. Okay, that's it. That's all I have for this week. As always, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Tell me what you think about this new Mavic 3 Pro. Is this something, I know a lot of people have been waiting for it. Tell me what you think about this. Tell me what you think about this surveying thing as well. And maybe if you got in trouble with surveying boards before, what happened. So I'd love to have someone on the show. Actually, I might reach out to Michael to follow up on this, because I think this is going to be a really interesting thing. So Michael, if you're watching, email me and then we'll talk. All right, that's it. That's all I got. Fly safe. We'll see you next week.